Finally, after 45 years, this heartbreaking cold case has been solved. In the quiet streets of Aberdeen, Scotland, an awful crime lay covered in mystery for over 4 decades. Brenda Page, the victim, was more than simply a name in the records of a horrifying unsolved murder. She was an accomplished scientist, an animal lover, and a person whose life was tragically taken. But no one knew at the time that it would take 45 years to solve this heartbreaking cold case. Brenda Page, a 32-year-old scientist from Aberdeen, Scotland, was found dead in her house on July 14, 1978, after having been savagely beaten and bloodied. Her murder was thoroughly investigated by the Aberdeen Police Department, but they had no idea at the time that this would be the biggest cold case Scotland has ever known. What makes Brenda's story particularly intriguing is her professional background as a scientist, specifically in the field of DNA testing. Little did anyone know at the time that DNA analysis, which was in its infancy in the late 1970s, would become a revolutionary tool in solving crimes. Brenda Page, who was born in 1946 in Ipswich, England, was well known for her unending kindness, quick humor, and intense love of animals. Her desire for knowledge prompted her to seek a career in zoology at University College London, where she excelled academically and received first-class honors. She then kept up her academic work, graduating from the University of Glasgow with a distinguished PhD in genetics. However, beneath her academic achievements lay the shadow of a chaotic marriage to Christopher Harrison, a relationship that would eventually crumble into divorce in 1976. Christopher was abusive, controlling, and violent towards Brenda from an early stage of their relationship. Christopher threatened to kill her after their divorce became final in 1977. Brenda's private life was clouded by the effects of this difficult past, putting a dent in her otherwise brilliant successes. After her divorce, Brenda was on her own. Brenda was struggling for money and responded in 1976 to a job advertisement. She found an advertisement in the newspaper as an escort. Back in the day, this was very different from now. An escort was simply employed to meet and socialize with men in order to earn extra money. There was absolutely no suggestion that Brenda had slept with any of these dinner dates, nor that she was involved in sex work in any form. Her family was fully aware of her second job. Brenda enjoyed meeting new people and dining in nice restaurants. On Wednesday, the 13th of July, 1978, she left work early in order to get ready for a night out. Together with another female escort, she had made plans to meet 2 businessmen at the Treetops Hotel in Aberdeen. Around 2:30 a.m., one of the men offered her a lift home, but she refused and went home alone. On Thursday, July 14th, she did not show up for work. Brenda's colleagues became concerned. They alerted one of her neighbors, an elderly woman by the name of Elizabeth Gordon, who held a spare key to Brenda's flat. The chaos in the flat provided a gloomy picture. She was found to have suffered more than 20 head and face injuries. The detectives were unwavering in their resolve to solve the case despite the grim evidence of multiple blows to the victim's skull. They realized that this was not a random act of violence, but rather a deliberate and targeted murder. Within her flat, chaos ruled, bearing witness to the violent struggle that took place. The sensation of dread was made worse by the unquestionable evidence of a forced entry through the apartment's back window, which suggested that this was a planned action carried out by someone with evil intentions. Robbery was dismissed as a motive, as nothing was missing. The 2 businessmen Brenda had spent time with the night before were questioned. After questioning by the police, they were excluded from the investigation as suspects. Christopher Harrison's troubling history of abusing Brenda made him an inevitable focal point in the murder investigation. However, the defense found it extremely difficult to prosecute him because there was no solid proof connecting him to the crime. He was released from custody without charge 6 days after the murder. The importance of DNA and paint chip samples became critical at this point. These crucial pieces of evidence were painstakingly gathered and carefully stored because investigators understood how important they were, even as the case grew colder over time. A ray of hope for future justice was held by the persistent preservation of these vital samples, even though Christopher Harrison avoided guilt right away due to a lack of evidence. It was evidence of the perseverance of law enforcement and the possibility of solving unsolved crimes. Nobody anticipated that Brenda Page's case would ultimately be given fresh life by the advancement of forensic technology, opening the door to long overdue closure and accountability. Fast forward to 2020, new change came into Brenda's cold case. Amazing developments in DNA testing and forensic science have given people new hope for justice. Finding DNA evidence on Brenda's bed cover was one of the crucial discoveries. This finding was a significant development because it pointed the finger of suspicion at Brenda's ex-husband, Christopher Harrison. When a paint chip was discovered in Harrison's car and forensically linked to the paint on Brenda's glass window, it became clear that this was yet another vital piece of the puzzle. Harrison's involvement in the horrifying crime was further supported by the growing link between the DNA match on Brenda's bed cover and the paint chip connection to his car. This important information provided a clear picture of what happened that horrible night. The disturbing element that left little room for question was that it appeared like Harrison's car had struck Brenda's window as her apartment was being forcibly invaded. When put together, these analytical results gave the prosecution's case against Christopher Harrison a big boost, making it impossible for him to put up a defense. With each new piece of information, Brenda Page's long-dormant need for justice grew stronger, and in the end, it gave her family the peace and answers they had been looking for 45 years. Even though Christopher Harrison angrily denied any participation in Brenda Page's untimely death, the evidence against him was clear. Two key pieces of evidence formed the foundation of the prosecution's case, which was made during the 2023 trial at Aberdeen High Court. First, Harrison was directly blamed for the DNA match found on Brenda's bed cover. His identification as the primary suspect following this forensic discovery was a key development in the investigation. Second, a damning piece of the puzzle was the finding of a paint chip in Harrison's car that was traced to Brenda's apartment window using forensics. It strengthened the case against Harrison by raising the possibility that his car had been used to break forcibly into Brenda's house. Finally, the jury concluded that Christopher Harrison was Brenda Page's murderer after being persuaded by the strength of this strong evidence. The undisputed forensic evidence forced him to admit what he had been denying all along and finally bringing justice to Brenda's family after all these years. Christopher Harrison's sentenced to life imprisonment and a required minimum of 20 years. This important ruling serves as a compelling example of the persistent commitment of law enforcement and the transformative potential of modern forensic technology in revealing the truths behind long-standing cold cases. It provided comfort and closure to Brenda's sorrowful family outside of the courtroom, giving them the answers and responsibility they had long wanted and putting an end to a terrifying, unexplained mystery that had haunted them for far too long. After decades of confusion and sadness, Brenda Page and her family finally found closure and justice at the end moment. Thanks for watching, and subscribe if you want to watch more videos like this.